Welcome to the Cosmo Dream Channel. Let's find out why NASA just built the most powerful rocket in history. Its mission: go to the moon and prepare humanity for Mars. Will they be able to realize all their grandiose plans and leave Elon and SpaceX behind? Stay tuned and find out in this episode. Imagine a spacecraft traveling 2.1 million kilometers through space, flying past the far side of the moon and returning safely to Earth. That's exactly what NASA is trying to do right now. But there's a twist. The mission depends on a private company that wants to build the biggest rocket ever created. And that company is SpaceX. So the real question is, who will actually get humans back to the moon first, NASA or SpaceX? On August 29th, the first launch of NASA's massive rocket space launch system was supposed to take place from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. However, due to an engine problem, the launch was postponed for several days. This rocket is often called the most powerful ever created. Its mission is to send the new spacecraft Orion spacecraft into space. Together, these systems mark the beginning of NASA's renewed lunar exploration program called Artemis program, which aims to return humans to the moon and prepare humanity for missions to Mars. Here's a closer look at what it's all about. According to NASA, Artemis I is a comprehensive test of systems designed for deep space exploration. The mission includes the Orion spacecraft, the SLS launch vehicle, and a range of supporting ground systems. Artemis I is the first in a series of increasingly complex missions. It will be conducted without astronauts on board. Instead, the spacecraft will carry mannequins equipped with numerous sensors that will collect data on radiation, vibrations, and other factors astronauts may experience during future flights. NASA says the launch will demonstrate the agency's commitment and ability to return humans to the moon and go even farther. As NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said, "For everyone who looks at the moon today and dreams about the day humanity returns to the lunar surface, we're here. We're going back. And this journey begins with Artemis I. In simple terms, the timing is symbolic. In December 2022, it marks 50 years since the mission Apollo 17, which took place in 1972 and was the last time humans landed on the moon before the Apollo program ended. The new lunar exploration series is called Artemis, named after the twin sister of Apollo in Greek mythology. NASA's roadmap includes several future missions. In 2024, the agency plans to launch Artemis II, which will send a crew of at least 4 astronauts aboard Orion on a flight around the moon. Then in 2025, NASA hopes to carry out Artemis III, which aims to land astronauts on the moon again. According to NASA, the mission will include the first woman and the first person of color to walk on the lunar surface. In the long term, these missions are also intended to help prepare humanity for human expeditions to Mars in the 2030s. NASA also describes SLS as the most powerful rocket in the world and Orion as a spacecraft capable of traveling farther than any previous human-rated spacecraft. During the mission, Orion will travel about 450,000 kilometers from Earth, passing behind the far side of the moon. At one point, it will be 64,000 kilometers beyond the moon's far side. In total, the spacecraft will travel more than 2.1 million kilometers during the mission. But an important part of the test is Orion's return. Unlike the SLS rocket, the Orion spacecraft must come back to Earth intact and remain usable for future missions, a concept somewhat similar to approaches promoted by Elon Musk. According to NASA, Artemis I will test the ability to orbit the moon and safely return the spacecraft to Earth. If the original launch schedule had worked, Orion would have splashed down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego on October 10th after 42 days and 3 hours in space. During re-entry, the spacecraft is expected to travel at around 40,000 kilometers per hour, slowing to about 480 kilometers per hour thanks to Earth's atmosphere. Recovery operations would involve the U.S. Department of Defense, along with NASA engineers from Kennedy Space Center and Johnson Space Center. The Orion spacecraft weighs about 15 tons, and is 1 meter wider than previous NASA crew modules. It can also be used to transport cargo to the International Space Station. Development of Orion began in the mid-2000s, and the spacecraft has already completed one test flight. That mission, launched on December 5, 2014, using a different rocket, was successful. The Space Launch System is an extremely ambitious project. It is a two-stage, super heavy launch vehicle, and the version used for Artemis I, known as Block 1, is 98.1 meters tall. Many elements of the rocket are based on technologies originally developed for the Space Shuttle program, which ended in 2011. According to NASA, SLS can place about 95 tons of payload into low Earth orbit, and after future upgrades this could increase to 130 tons. For missions to the Moon, the rocket could deliver about 27 tons of cargo. This capability is why NASA calls it the most powerful rocket currently in use. However, there's also competition from the private space sector. The company SpaceX is developing its own super heavy rocket called Starship. Starship is expected to carry around 100 tons to orbit. Like SLS, it had not yet completed its first orbital flight at the time these plans were discussed. But unlike SLS, it is designed to be fully reusable, which could make it much cheaper to operate. NASA is aware of this advantage and plans to use Starship in future Artemis missions, specifically as a lunar lander that will dock with Orion and transport astronauts to the Moon's surface. The company SpaceX plays a key role in the plan to return humans to the Moon as part of the Artemis program. To achieve this, the company is developing a special lunar version of its spacecraft called Starship HLS, which is designed to deliver astronauts to the Moon's surface during the mission Artemis III. According to the mission plan, astronauts will first travel toward the Moon aboard the Orion spacecraft, launched by the Space Launch System. Once in lunar orbit, they will dock with Starship, transfer into it, and descend to the surface of the Moon. However, the timeline has been delayed several times because Starship is still undergoing testing. One of the biggest technical challenges is refueling the spacecraft in orbit. A single lunar mission could require up to 10 to 12 tanker launches to deliver fuel into space. SpaceX is currently conducting intensive tests of new Starship versions and Raptor engines, as well as practicing rocket landings and reusability. If these tests are successful, astronauts could return to the Moon by the end of the decade, marking an important step toward future human missions to Mars. Thank you for watching the video on my channel Cosmo Dream.